So after another season where Alta IF conquered the domestic double and refusing the advances of Newcastle United, Ole Fury Solskjær's focus for the final 2 years of his contract would be to continue his team's form as the absolute best in domestic competitions in Norway, and to take him as far as they could go in the continental stage with the UEFA Champions League. He wouldn't have much of an off-season yet again, as the team returned from pre-season just after the Christmas break in order to prepare for their final 2 Champions League group stage matchups against Napoli and the team that eliminated them last season in Paris Saint-Germain.
Yes, sir.
I mean, both of those matches ended up being draws, but considering both teams beat Alta last year in rather decisive manners, this was already an improvement in and of itself. That did lead Alta to fall off the top 8 though, and yet again, they would have to play in the knockout playoff round to continue their run in this competition. Much like last season, they would get another Dutch team, but this time, it would be AFC Ajax. So, while they'd be missing one of their key starters in midfield, Alta would head to Johan Cruyff Arena and manage to rescue a draw against the current leaders in the Eredivisie and ensure that the decisive game would take place in Norway. It was a return game in which Alta found their opportunities with Morten Spunnes scoring the first goal. In the second half, it's another young prospect from the Alta Academy in Johans Bjorkens who scores with a header off a set piece to make it 2-0. To their credit, Ajax did not go gently into that good night as Andreas Lerkehau completely whiffs on a corner kick clearance and Nathan Ngomu gets one back at the 77th minute, before proceeding to score on yet another corner kick to tie up the aggregate, and that takes the game into extra time. For Alta, they thankfully aren't up against Musterman's Ajax team, at least not in this particular universe, and they also have Ivan Molina finally making a run into the box to score in the 96th minute. And Alta then manages to hold on to the result in order to advance to the round of 16, causing what some are considering to be a little bit of an upset result. They just had to have yet another injury in order to do so. But look, they're back in the round of 16, and let's just see who they're get. Ai meu Deus do céu e da terra.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Look, they might owe 10 billion to the Spanish government at this rate, but that only makes this matchup worse, because they're probably desperate for money, and winning in the Champions League at least gets you paid accordingly. This isn't going to be easy by any means. But to his credit, Ole Fury did not hesitate to take a more balanced approach to the first leg, and while Barcelona had the advantages on possession and shots, it was Alta that found the back of the net. They found the back of the net 3 times. So after stunning Barca in the first leg, Ole Fury and his men just had a pretty simple task. You know, going into Camp Nou in front of 90,000+ for the second leg of the Champions League and trying not to get their backs broken in the process.
1 week later,
Ansu Fati would nearly do said back-breaking by himself at the tail end of the second half by scoring 2 goals. But thankfully, Morten Spunnes ices the Catalonians' hopes and dreams with a goal in stoppage time to make it 4-2 on aggregate, and for the first time in their history, Alta IF moves to the quarterfinals of the Champions League. This is the point where the season would get a little tougher, as Ole Fury would have to balance the initial fixtures of the eliteserien and the NM Cupen while trying to continue advancing further in the Champions League, as the quarterfinals would put him against Germany's Borussia Dortmund. We'll keep the focus on the Champions League for the time being, as the Germans do come to Norway for the first leg of the quarterfinal and manage to hold Alta to 0 shots on target in the process. But thanks to Andreas Lerkehau's efforts, the match ended in a 0-0 draw. The return leg would see Ole Fury shift from the 4-2-3-1 he'd been using in previous matchups to his patented 5-3-2 counterattack tactic, and that shift in tactics paid off dividends as a returning Alton Onesland initiated a counterattack in the 18th minute along with Ivan Molina before opening up the scoring himself. Dortmund would continue to take their chances on goal, but they weren't finding the mark as easily as in the first leg. And eventually, the 73rd minute saw Dortmund get caught yet again on the counter, and Ivan Molina catching keeper Ilan Meslier off his line with a lob to make it 2-0. While Dortmund would end up getting a controversial penalty kick via VAR and Salvatore Esposito scored to make it 2-1, it was too little, too late. In typical Dortmund fashion, they bottle it yet again in a game that matters most, as Alta somehow, some way, pulls off yet another rabbit out of the hat to advance to the Champions League semi-final. It doesn't get any easier, as it's Napoli that is waiting for them on the other side of that semi-final. Alta does have the advantage of hosting the first leg, and to their credit, the combination of playing in their home soil and their young talent developing into capable players at this level allows them to go toe-to-toe against Napoli, and eventually Alten Ånesland finds the back of the net yet again in this competition in the 65th minute. They held steady and came out of the first leg with the 1-0 aggregate, although they now had the task to hold on to that result or build on it in Naples. This is the price to pay for that Dortmund win, isn't it?
This sucks.
Yeah, it really sucks.
Missing one of the key cogs in their offense for the second leg of the semi-final isn't going to help matters. Napoli is desperate from the moment the whistle blows in the second leg, and eventually, their press wins out as the combined efforts of Rooney Bardki, Giacomo Raspadori, and Matistel break through the Alta defense, and Napoli scores the tying goal of the aggregate. But immediately after the kickoff from that aggregate goal, Napoli's press fails to capitalize on a chance, and Alten Ånesland finds Morten Sponas with a long-range pass, and the Premier League-bound player weaves his way through the Napoli defense to chip the ball over the keeper and score the tying goal for Alta IF. Fighting for their lives in every sense of the word, Napoli ups the pressure and their chances almost result in the second goal. But with their defending and a great amount of luck, Alta survives the last barrage, and they pull yet another stunning upset to punch their ticket to Greece in the Champions League final. And it would be Manchester United that's standing between them and ultimate glory. This Manchester United team still had Marcus Rashford captaining it, and Lisandro Martinez recklessly tackling people like the Argentinian pest he is, but their look was much different, as their manager was now Ruud van Nistelrooy, who'd been a former player for the club in the 2000s, and in this particular corner of the universe, they managed to get Florian Wirtz and Jude Bellingham on the same roster. Oh, right, yeah, Mason Mount's still here too, I guess.
Right, now let's score a goal! Hey, oh!
But while Alta would be headed to Greece for that final at the beginning of June, I guess we can touch on the domestic campaign and everything that's been going on in between these games. Outside of an early season loss to Vålerenga just before their second leg against Dortmund, Alta's put on some pretty dominant performances in the eliteserien. They have been top of the league with a game in hand. Their new stadium in Alta Park and Arena was finally opened in mid-May. Things were going well, and the same went for the Norwegian Cup, where they had dispatched of Kvikvalden, Gerosen, and Brumunddal in the first 3 rounds, and were set to face Sarpsborg 08 in the round of 16 a few weeks after the Champions League final. Thus, let's head back to the matter at hand, the UEFA Champions League final. It's obviously the biggest stage in which a club like Alta could ever step into, and they were going up against a team that was desperate to win its first piece of silverware since an Europa League title in 2024. The difference in the levels between both teams was shown from the get-go, as the Red Devils turned up the aggression and pressed like no other. They'd hold the advantage on possession and shots, although the defense was doing more than enough to either block them or ensure they're going off target, with Andreas Lerkehau making the saves when needed. But in the 80th minute, the dam finally broke, as Jan Thielman made his way into the box after a Tom Batig pass and scored to make it 1-0 Manchester United. Ole Fury would have to think fast here, and he shifts to a makeshift formation to push for the tying goal, which nearly bites him in the ass almost immediately on 2 separate occasions. However, a free kick in Manchester United's zone, a few smart passes, and Alton Onisland makes another impact in a crucial game, as his pass finds Choi Sung-gyeon, who finds the back of the net to tie it up at the 85th minute mark. Alta is hanging on by a literal thread at this point, as Lerkehall has to make the biggest save of his life not even 2 minutes later. But it is enough to drag him into extra time, where Ole Fury's approach is basically to survive at this point, to maybe find another counter-attack opportunity if Manchester United slipped up. All the while, the Red Devils just decided to take any shot at goal they could find. But extra time did not yield a winner. And with that, Greece was set to see the third act of this theater of dreams take place, as Alta IF and Manchester United headed to penalty kicks. Marcus Rashford would take center stage by going first and scoring for Man United. Ivan Molina would then take the first shot for Alta, only for it to be saved by Jurjan Sheker.
What a save!
John Thielman and Harald Tungen would score respectively for their teams. Florian Wirtz would follow suit to make it 3-1 Man United. Then, it was vice-captain Ole Christensen's turn. And he kicked it straight at the goalie.
Oh no!
20-year-old wonder kid Tom Batig was the next kicker, and while Andreas Lerkehau goes the right way, it's still not enough to save it. This particular piece of theater ends in bliss and championship glory for Manchester United. But for Alta IF, it's nothing short of a goddamned Greek tragedy. To come so close to the mark and fall short, that alone shakes Ole Fury Solskjær to his score. He'd be lauded for bringing the team to this point. That Alta scorer players could very well find their way back here again if they played like they did this year. But that's the thing about a competition like the Champions League. There's no guarantee that you can replicate the same level of success every year. For all he knew, this was Alta's one shot at it all.
You blew it! You had it all and you blew it!
The season was not over though. Because of the Norwegian schedule, their focus had to come back to the domestic competitions, and Ole Fury finally made a big splash move on the transfer market by grabbing 20-year-old fullback Elliot Pelletier from Anderlecht, veteran defender Marquinhos from Liverpool, and attacking midfielder Runar Norheim from AZ in the August transfer window. Those moves did allow Alta to pick up the pieces from the Champions League loss and proceed to make good on winning their 4th straight eliteserien title by the end of the year with a 24-4-2 record. Something that they got to do in their brand new stadium in Alta for the first time since their arrival in the eliteserien, after kicking the snot out of Molde FK 6-0 near the end of the season. Alta did so while yet again scoring the most goals across the eliteserien while conceding the least goals.
Very nice. High five.
Since we last checked in, Alta also made their way through the Norwegian Cup into the final after dealing with Sarpsborg 08, Kristiansund, and Jerv. But their finals opponent in Vålerenga did not give him an easy time, as the two sides ended the first 90 minutes at 1-1, and Vålerenga managed to drag the eliteserien champions to penalty kicks for the first time since that Champions League final loss. And once again, Ole Christensen would have a penalty kick saved by the keeper.
You're joking. Not another one?
It would be the only miss in that entire set of penalty kicks, as the efforts of the remainder of the team are not enough, and a second chance at a trophy slips through Ole Fury's fingers in a cup final. Vålerenga lifted the NM Cupen for the 5th time in their existence and punched their ticket into the UEFA Europa League. Now, in a glass half full kind of view, this is a season that saw Alta IF being just a few penalty kicks going their way to achieve a treble of the likes that has never been seen in Norwegian football. But Ole Fury Solskjær has more often than not been a glass half empty kind of person. I mean, have you seen his face? Exactly. He made a promise to push this team as far as it can go, and with one more year left on his deal,
I have to finish the story.
The Champions League campaign for the 2030-31 stretch had gone rather smoothly for Alta up to this point, as they qualified into the group stages without too much concern and had gone unbeaten in their first 6 games of that group stage, including a victory over Barcelona and a draw against AC Milan. Ole Fury would tackle the last 2 games of the Champions League group stages in January against the likes of RB Leipzig and Chelsea to put the team in a top 8 spot to get a direct bye into the round of 16. He would wage war against the titans of Europe and find ways to frustrate them, getting revenge on Paris Saint-Germain from 2 seasons ago in the round of 16, in a manner that would allow Macwo to make a video about their legacy of failure for the 8th year running, and by taking out Borussia Dortmund for the 2nd year running from the competition.
You're gonna be joking me!
Ole Fury would return to that sacred ground of the Champions League final, and on the last year of his contract, he would not be denied. Wait, Bayern beat him 3-2 on aggregate, and both deciding goals in each leg were scored by Bayern in stoppage time? Ah, dang it.